Hi, everybody. Al Bernstein here with another one of my quick hits videos. Now, on another quick hits video, I talk about the year in boxing in 2015, and I make a very definite assertion that overall the product of boxing was excellent, that more good fights were put out there for people than we would normally see in a year. And I compared it even to 2013 when the sport was tremendous. But most people look at boxing also through the prism of the major events, the events that reach out to the casual boxing fan. And so this quick hits video is about boxing's biggest events in 2015, success or failure. There are three of them, maybe four. I'll mention a fourth also that we're going to look at and talk about how each of these, in some ways, were successful, but also each of these ended up in some ways failing the sport. The first one, a fight that resonated with boxing fans to the tune of more than 4.5 million pay-per-view sales, the biggest by far that has ever been done. Of course, that was Floyd Mayweather taking on Manny Pacquiao in a dramatic meeting of these two iconic figures, the two men who have, for the most part, driven the engine of boxing's commerce over the last decade or more. It was a fight that, leading up to it, not everyone was sure it was going to be a scintillating affair for a couple of reasons. One, Manny Pacquiao wasn't quite the same Manny Pacquiao he was several years ago. Floyd Mayweather is the most adept fighter in the history, maybe, of the sport at taking the air out of a fight and making it a fight that's very winnable for him, but not one that is thrilling to watch. Those two things collided in this fight. There was a round 4, in which Manny Pacquiao was able to make the fight into something that we all hoped it would be, but then it became a less exciting affair. And to add to that the fight maybe lived down to some people's expectations, while all these casual boxing fans who had popped in as part of the 4.5 million pay-per-view buys, and really when you think of the number of people, you multiply that by a bunch because so many of these pay-per-views were parties where more people were there. Not only did the fight not scintillate these casual boxing fans that could get interested in the sport, in addition, the post-fight controversy about Pacquiao admitting he fought with an injury and suggesting he was less than what he should have been, but still went through with the fight, created just the worst kind of controversy for the sport, and kind of suggested to people that all their doubts about the sport of boxing, if they were cynical about it, had been fortified. So that part of it, not so good. A successful fight in terms of the revenue it produced, the attention it focused on the sport, but because of the aftermath and because of the fight itself, didn't do a lot to push the sport of boxing forward. Now we flash forward to what many expected to be the singular event in boxing that couldn't miss. Miguel Cotto taking on Canelo Alvarez in a fight that people had been looking forward to also for well over a year, and the fight was made, which was great. It happened, and it filled up the live arena, and it produced not quite the fight we thought we were going to see. It was a very good fight. I thought it was an interesting fight. Miguel Cotto showed he's still a very viable fighter. Canelo Alvarez fought well, but they did not produce the fireworks that everyone thought were going to be produced by this fight. It was a good fight, but not a great fight. It generated according to the announcement, something close to 900,000 pay-per-views, which in this pay-per-view universe that exists now wasn't bad. But it didn't create that signature event for boxing this year that many people thought would happen. There was another fight that many thought would be a kind of a catalyst to do a couple different things, to push Gennady Golovkin into a situation where he would be truly a superstar and would also show that boxing could make very competitive, exciting fights in many weight divisions. And it really did neither. That was the fight in which Gennady Golovkin fought Lemieux for the middleweight title, and they fought at Madison Square Garden. And David Lemieux came into this fight, not super well known, but a big, hard-punching, hell-bent for leather fighter who had won his title, and unlike many other middleweight champions or contenders, was willing to step in the ring with Gennady Golovkin. Well, everything started out very well. They sold out Madison Square Garden fairly early. The media coverage at the beginning when the fight was announced suggested that this fight was going to take off in New York and maybe even do well as a pay-per-view event. A couple of things happened to it along the way. It was mistimed. It was in October, and in the United States, in any case, went against so many other important sporting events that coverage of the fight nationally was minimal. And even in New York, where people thought it would generate this major buzz, it didn't as much as it should have. They did sell out Madison Square Garden, but the pay-per-view numbers ended up being dreadful, something under 200,000, which really weren't what they would have hoped for. And the third part of this, which is really unfortunate, is it didn't produce the fight that people thought it would. David Lemieux was not able to engage the way he had in other fights with Gennady Golovkin. He was daunted by Golovkin's power and some of Golovkin's boxing skills as well. And Golovkin really was able to dominate the fight, and there were portions of the fight that just weren't scintillating. He would stop David Lemieux, do what he's been doing, winning in convincing fashion. And it wasn't that Gennady Golovkin did anything to tell you he was a lesser fighter than he was, but when you combine all these things, Lemieux not quite being able to put forth the effort they wanted, and the fight not generating the buzz that many people thought it would, and the pay-per-view numbers, it turned out not to be the vehicle that would launch Gennady Golovkin further into superstardom. He's certainly a star to boxing fans, but has not broken that glass ceiling of getting to casual boxing fans. Now, those are three of the biggest events in boxing. There was one more, and I would mention it because it merits mentioning because it impacted worldwide boxing. And it too was a mixed bag. Tyson Fury pulled a major upset in beating Vladimir Klitschko. And that had profound effect on boxing and boxing fans around the globe for a couple different reasons. It finally stopped the reign temporarily, maybe, because there'll be a rematch, but possibly permanently, of Vladimir Klitschko and his brother Vitaly as having a stranglehold on the heavyweight division. It interjected into the mix a fighter from the UK, where boxing is at an all-time high, a very flamboyant and controversial figure in Tyson Fury. All of that kind of has energized the sport a bit, along with Deontay Wilder winning a portion of the heavyweight championship in the United States, which creates some interesting synergy. So this event did that, but even this event also showed some of the warts that people look at when they see boxing, and that is that the heavyweight division is a little bit moribund in terms of the way fights are fought. And this fight was not an interesting fight. In fact, it was the opposite of interesting. However, or exciting, I should say, because it was kind of interesting. Tyson Fury, who is normally a very exciting fighter, one of his mantras is, I don't want to be like the Klitschkos. I want to be in exciting fights. And for the most part, he is. He goes down often, gets up, scores knockdowns. He throws a lot of punches. He's not the typical heavyweight. But for this fight, rightly apparently, Fury and his team crafted a plan that was designed to minimize risk and use his height, which he's the tallest fighter that Klitschko had ever fought, to utilize that to win this fight. It was great for him, but it didn't create a scintillating fight. And so even in this moment in which a huge ripple effect was felt in boxing, and something that most people, and this is nothing against Vladimir Klitschko, who I think has represented the sport in a very fine way and has represented a heavyweight championship in a way that you would always want to represent it. But let's be honest, people wanted the end of the Klitschko reign. They wanted more. They wanted something more exciting in the heavyweight division. They wanted competition, and that's what happened here. But even in doing so, it wasn't scintillating. So we look at all these events, these major events in boxing, in a year when, as I've said, boxing created tremendous fights, a body of fights, better than it has in most years in the last 15 or 20 years. The main events that happened in boxing, the main fights, didn't help push the sport to the next level. And that's going to be a challenge for 2016. What events there are that will reach this level? Floyd Mayweather presumably is retired. Manny Pacquiao is heading to retirement. He'll have one more fight, and that'll be certainly a significant one. New stars need to arise. New major rivalries need to arise. And we'll see how in 2016 whether the sport of boxing can create mega events that will push it forward. But for 2015, very mixed bag on the big events in the sport of boxing.